I did have a day job for 6 years, working as a video editor at a record label, and I could do music only after work at night and on the weekends. And so this music video is pretty much a metaphor for that lifestyle I was living. And, when I become a spy at night, that's like me writing songs and making music.
Right. Well, I'm Adam. Very nice to meet you, and thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm super stoked.
Awesome. Well, this is a podcast about you and your journey in music, and we'll talk about the new records and stuff you have coming out. And yeah, I love what you're doing. I was just listening to, you know, the er, I was listening to your catalog earlier, but recently the most like 5 recent ones that I dig it. So
Thank you.
excited
Appreciate
to chat.
appreciate that.
Mhm. So, just based off what I was reading a little bit about you and some past interviews you did, are you and the song contest and stuff? Are you from Jersey originally?
Yeah, I'm from New Jersey, Bergen County.
Okay, born and raised there.
Yes, and my family's still there, so go back a
Oh,
lot and visit, which is great.
that's awesome. What was it like growing up in Jersey? I know the music is scene is fairly big. I mean, a lot of those emo bands came out of there. Saves the
Yeah.
Day, and I think Bayside, and some of those other bands were all out of Jersey.
Yeah, I think since it's so close to New York City, a lot of music and art comes out of New Jersey unexpectedly, maybe. But yeah, I loved growing up in Jersey. I feel like sometimes it gets a bad rep, but it was an amazing childhood. Like, where else are you going to be that close to New York City and the beach? Nowhere.
Right.
It's a really prime location, I would say, for like having multiple different experiences growing up. So I really loved it. And yeah.
Did you go into the city often, like as a kid, or not
I
so
feel
much?
like not really as a kid as much, but once I was in college and older and could drive myself in or like go in on the bus or the train with my friends, we definitely did anytime I went back to visit. So that was like a cool perk. Anytime I visit home, I can go to New York City, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How different is that moving to Nashville? I mean, Nashville's way smaller, obviously, as far as the town goes in New
Yeah.
York.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've always liked a smaller city, and so that's why I chose Nashville. When I was in college, I did a semester in Nashville, New York, and LA to
Hmm.
decide where I wanted to move after graduating, and I just loved the community vibe of Nashville, and um, so I decided to move here, and I've loved it ever since.
That's awesome. So growing up, do you come from a like creative household, a musical family, or anything like that?
Everyone in my family can sing,
Oh,
and
that's cool.
yeah, there was a time where my sisters and I, like everyone thought we'd be kind of like a little trio. But the two of them kind of decided not to pursue music in any way. It's a scary thing to pursue, and so
Right.
I decided, I think it was like obvious that it was mm, a thing that I was definitely always going to be doing. So I just continued down my like solo career path, I guess.
Okay. You're the oldest, right? Just based off of the song you wrote.
Based off of my song. Yeah, I am the oldest child. Yeah. And I feel like that plays into my personality so much. And it's become such a hot topic on like TikTok and social media recently. Or maybe because I wrote that song, I'm seeing so much content around it, but I
Yeah.
feel like it just comes up all the time, like birth order.
Really? Like, what do people? I'm old, so like TikTok to me, I'm still trying to figure it out. And it's
Okay,
gonna
yeah,
be
yeah.
gone by the time I actually get it.
Well,
But
yeah.
uh, like, what are the people saying about it? Like, I'm the eldest. I only have one sibling, and my sister's 11 years younger than I am. And people are like, "You
Okay.
have the same parents and stuff." I'm like, "Yeah." Uh, I was
Yeah.
the mistake, not her. So I'm just curious what people are saying about, yeah, like the sibling order. Are you the like caretaker type?
Yeah, so they say the oldest is like the one that paves the way and has is like kind of the goody two shoes child and is like a go-getter. And then they
Uh-huh.
say the middle child is the one who's like rebellious, but also super charismatic, like has maybe like the funniest, best personality. And the youngest, there's different things I see all the time for the youngest. I think the youngest can be kind of like just there and like feeding off the personalities of the other two, or
Okay.
they're kind of like the spoiled princess baby that like gets everything they want.
Mhm.
So it can go multiple ways, but that's generally what I hear.
Okay.
I feel like it's maybe different for you. It sounds like because there's such a wide age gap, maybe you were more like an only child vibe, and she kind of your sister
Yeah,
was.
I was
Oh,
like, we were both kind of only child. I mean, I was only child till I was 11, and then it was like, now I'm the
yeah,
yeah, you could go get in trouble and be that kid. Like, I was funny when you said goody two shoes. I'm like, oh, I was definitely not. My sister kind of picked that up, but yeah, it's
that's
funny.
so funny.
Just yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
it's just so interesting talking to people about it because I don't know. I feel like a lot of people do fit into those stereotypes actually, and they're like very surprised to hear that.
do you feel like that's how your dynamic was growing up?
100%, like to a T. That is
Really?
our whole family dynamic. And so yeah, I wrote that song, and it's crazy how many people resonated with it. I felt like when I wrote it that it was such a specific topic, but I find when I write more specific songs, more people relate to them, surprisingly.
I was gonna say I've heard that quite a bit, where you feel like you're being like overly vulnerable with a song, and then that becomes the one that people are like, no, this is what I relate to so much. It's crazy to think like how human, interaction is, like how you can write something so specific to your life, and then it's like so many people are like, oh my gosh, I have that same feeling.
Totally. And that actually happens with like I'll play a show and people will come up to me after and they'll be like, "I resonate with this song, this song, this song, this song." It's like you and I are the same person. Like I have a song about being half Japanese, like very specific about being
Yeah.
Japanese and pushing that away while I was growing up because I was insecure about it. And like people will come up to me, they'll be like, I'm half Japanese or I'm half some other ethnicity. I'm also the oldest child. I also grew up not really getting along with my mom that well and having issues there, which is what my song Grace is about. So
Uh-huh.
just interesting how these really specific songs, people feel more connected to me and feel, yeah, like we are the same person. It's really,
Right, right. Yeah, you're talking about I'm Sorry Tokyo, right? That's the one that you wrote kind of about
yes,
that.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah, I related to that song in the way like my wife is half Filipino, but she
Okay. Yeah.
looks white. I mean, if you knew that, she has red hair, and
Oh,
she
wow.
doesn't really look like it, but like if you knew, you could look and say, "Okay, I see the features." But her
Yeah.
brother looks Filipino. Like you wouldn't
Totally.
question it. But I remember she used to get that quite a bit too. People would just make little comments and stuff, and she's just like, okay, I'm just gonna shut up and pretend like I'm not Asian at all, type. Like, I wonder if you had those same experiences where, I don't know, maybe somebody said some comment that you're like, well, I guess I'm just the white person here as well.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, the song is basically about how I never learned how to speak the language and I've never been to Japan. It feels almost like, it wasn't really a part of me, which is really sad now as an adult. I feel like it would be so cool to have that tie and those experiences and just things I regret. But I feel like so many people in America who are around my age have that same experience. And
Mhm.
now parents are changing their tune and they're like trying to make their kids bilingual, trilingual.
Right.
Whereas before it was like you should only speak English if you want to be cool, fit in with society, etc.
I was
So
wondering, like, does your mom speak Japanese, and or dad? Is
yeah.
your mom that's Japanese or dad?
Yeah, it's my mom and she speaks fluently, and none of my siblings and I speak at all.
Did she ever speak in Japanese, like, growing up? Like, do you remember that at
Yeah.
all? Oh,
Yeah, I hear her speak in Japanese to this day. Like
huh.
she used to speak to her parents while they were still living in Japanese, and my grandma would come over when I was younger and bring over like workbooks to learn it. And I just was too cool for school. I was like
Yeah.
13 and I was like, I don't need to learn this. Nobody I see on TV who's a famous pop star, which is my dream, is speaking
Speaking
Japanese.
Japanese.
So
That's
why would I need to learn that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. 'Cause I feel like with the way my wife was raised too, like, but her mom she doesn't speak Tagalog, like, ever. Like, she knows it, and, like, if she needs to use it for whatever reason, she'll do it, but it's, like, something that she just never taught her kids and really kind of embraced at all. It was like, "We're gonna learn English and, kind of mold into this
Totally.
society as it is here in the States." But,
Yeah. And just speaking to more people like you, it sounds like such a common occurrence. So
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I told her, I was like, I would, it's because I grew up in San Diego, and there's a lot of Spanish. I mean, every city's street is all in Spanish, and people kind of like if you a lot of my friends were Mexican or Hispanic, and their whole families always spoke in Spanish all the time. But
Yeah.
you'd always kind of see the divide when it came to situations in public and stuff like, oh, that's you need to speak in English. It's like what? Like,
Totally.
um,
Yeah.
but so growing up, you wanted to be a pop star. It sounds, I mean, you said at 13, but what age do you start singing? You said your sisters also sang. Are they quite a bit younger than you? Are you all close in age to have your pop group that could have possibly been?
Yeah. So my two younger sisters, one of them is like 2.5, 3 years younger than me, and the other one is 7 years. So that's a little bit of an age gap for sure.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, growing up, I learned guitar. My other sister learned drums.
Oh,
And we
cool.
were like, maybe we'll be a little band, but it just never panned out.
Okay.
Mhm.
How old were you when you learned guitar?
So I grew up doing musical theater. I think when I was 7 years old, I went up to my mom and I was like, I want to be a singer. Somehow I had that thought in my head. And nobody knew if I was any good. Like they had no experience with the music industry or anything like that. But they took me to an audition. My mom, thankfully, they've always been really supportive of
Mhm.
my dreams and desires and took me to an audition where we were told she is good. She can sing.
A
Or
validation from someone
yeah,
outside of your house.
exactly. It was confirmed. And then I started doing musical theater growing up, but my dad was always into rock music growing up, and he was like, "You should really learn guitar and write songs." And I was like, "Whatever, whatever."
Mhm.
And then when I was 13, I discovered Taylor Swift. And I was like,
Okay.
oh, this is a girl who's like my age, who's writing songs. I guess it's cool. I guess it's something I could do as well. And so when I was 13, I finally took my dad up on that and started guitar lessons and writing my own songs. And then eventually went to college for music production and all that, and then moved to Nashville, of course. So um, I guess when I was 13 is when that shift happened from musical theater to contemporary pop music.
When you were in like 13, you're in high school, or I think, right? Or close to it,
Mhm.
13, 14.
Yeah, I was like
Uh,
eighth grade.
yeah. Were you the kid at school that was writing songs and playing, coffee shops or local shows? And did everyone know that you were a songwriter and everything? Or is that something you kind of kept yourself?
It was like a little different. I feel like because I started in theater, everyone just knew me as the girl that sang. And so
Mm.
like in choir, I had all the solos. If there was a theater performance, like I was singing, a main song or whatever. Um, And so when I switched over to songwriting, it's not like I was playing coffee shops around, but whenever there was a talent show or anything like that, I would be performing and everyone knew that. Um, yeah, but it's super interesting because I was just talking to a friend about how when you move to Nashville, everybody is that kid. Like you feel like you're the
Right.
special kid at your school that is that one that sings and whatever, and then you come to Nashville and everyone was that kid at their school. Um,
Right. And they're all
yeah.
here pursuing their dream of getting signed and doing the whole thing.
Exactly, exactly.
Uh,
So it's not special anymore.
that's funny. So you go to school, college for music and production. Where did you end up attending college?
Yeah, I went to Elon University in North Carolina, and
Okay.
I guess that kind of sparked my love for the South a little bit.
Rad.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm happy that I ventured outside of my home state for college, and I feel like it totally uh helped me grow as a person and a human being, and I'm so different now than I would have been like if I had stayed where I
Sure.
grew up.
Did you
What about
put
you?
I grew up in San Diego, and I went to college in north of San Diego.
Yeah.
Um,
And then what
so
prompted you to move to Nashville?
just life in general during the pandemic. I have
Okay.
two kids that were still like in school and wearing or not in school yet, like at home. And my one son was a pre-kindergarten, and he's like trying to learn on the computer. I'm like, this is a joke. Like, I don't want him to grow up like illiterate because he has 20 minutes a day on the internet with a teacher that's basically like, okay, we're gonna color and then come back in 10 minutes and we'll talk about what you drew. And we
Yeah.
moved here, and it was like the first weekend we moved here, it was like mask mandate gone. Like everybody could just, be like no, life is back to normal, and that's what we were looking for, and quality of life, and there's a lot of factors that came into it, but actually Nashville became, I would have never guessed in a million years that I'd move here. I thought it was a country town, and that really wasn't my specialty. Or like I grew up doing radio, and I was on the radio in San Diego and San Francisco for nearly 2 decades, and I never thought that Nashville would be a place that would I just would ever land. And I'm interviewing all these artists and people from bands, and I'm like, Ryan Key from Yellow Card lives in Franklin, and you hear all these people that from all different genres of music that are all in Nashville. I'm like, really? You're in Nashville? Like, yeah, I love it here. So that kind of just sparked my interest. And then we checked it out, and I was like, it's my wife and I were like, this is it. We're going here. So
Yeah. It
best
just
decision
feels
we
like
ever made.
yeah, I love that. I love to hear that you and it's cool that you later in life decided to move somewhere new and love it.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in San Francisco for a while, and it was all right. It was cool. I mean, it was fun when I was younger and everything, but you know, having a family and stuff, that just wasn't the vibe. And in San Diego it was just hard to live. It's like so expensive. So,
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
we moved here, and it was just like a weight off the shoulders in a way.
Mhm.
But and the
Totally.
music scene here is huge. Is wild. I didn't realize how big it is. And then you hear about it. Oh, it's Music City, and I'm like, yeah, I guess if you're into country, and no, 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 no.
Uh, yeah, I think that is something that people get tripped up on is that Nashville is not just country. There are so many genres here. And talented songwriters. That doesn't mean you're in your country specifically, just people who are good at writing songs.
Yeah, this is like a songwriter's area, right? I mean, I've had people on the show that were talking about, if you want to be a songwriter, if you're into that, you know, writing songs and that whole aspect of the industry, like you go to Nashville, and if production and pop, like more of that pop base, those records are made more in LA or New York, maybe, but it's like, here's like the songwriters. These are the people
Yeah.
that write songs, and the musicians, not as much of the computer stuff.
Mhm. Yeah. I think what's important to me with my is that I'm making pop music that has a story that has, you know, important lyrical content. Um,
Yeah,
and
there's
so
depth to all your songs, for
thank you.
sure.
Yeah. And so that's definitely a Nashville influence for sure.
Yeah.
I want the catchy pop melody, but I also want to be saying something of substance.
Right, and I feel like that's what they do here. I mean,
Mm.
not the songs they're not all just like this outlaw country, great lyrics, no, not quite melody, but it's like you see so many hit records that are all these big. I mean, all the Jelly Roll stuff that comes out, like all of that is like huge, and it's all made here in Nashville. But
Yeah.
when you were in North Carolina, were you writing and releasing your own music at that point, or were you still kind of just getting your feet wet, or
I was
having
in college, so I did release some stuff, but I've since taken it down, just
okay.
growth and stuff over time.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was a great I love Elon University. I'm so glad I went there. I feel like it was a perfect place for me to go and grow and get my feet wet with releasing music and stuff like that. Um, but yeah.
Yeah. Was your first kind of like, I guess, like jump in the industry, or like kind of leveling up, I guess, in a way, getting on that songwriting show, that like the US Eurovision thing?
Yeah. So American Song Contest.
That's what it's
Did
called. I
that in,
was blanking
yeah.
out.
No, you're good. Yeah. It was a really cool opportunity. I love to perform. That's probably my favorite part of being an artist is being on stage. And that was such an interesting opportunity because I learned when you perform on stage with cameras, not only are you thinking about the choreography and singing well and your movement on stage, but you also have to look at specific cameras at specific times. I don't know if you know that, but it's all
Oh,
choreographed. So it's like jump off the bed, look at this camera, make sure you're on this mark, because if you're not going to be center in the camera's line. Okay, and then you're going to walk over here, and then you're going to grab the camera and you're going to move it, but you have to make sure you grab it a certain way, otherwise it won't look correct on TV. So my mind was thinking about a million things at once. It was like the most intense like thought process
Yeah.
while performing. So it was a really cool experience, and I got to work with professional backup dancers in LA who like had my dance already choreographed. I walked in, they taught it to me. And I had to like
Crazy.
remember it all. And yeah, it was an awesome experience. I'm still friends with the people I did that show with. And I got to sing in front of Kelly Clarkson and Snoop Dogg, which you don't get to see
Yeah.
every day. And they were
That's
both so kind and
that's
encouraging.
cool.
Yeah. And
Were
so
you How did you get kind of did you submit to get on the show, or did you get like a DM, or like how did that begin?
yes, I did submit to be on the show, like all of those reality TV shows. And I guess it just kind of kept narrowing down until I was selected, which was really cool. Um, and I think to get on it, I had to submit my original song. They were like, "What song would you perform on stage?" And so it was interesting because it was a song that I wasn't sure I was going to put out. It had to be because they were like, "We don't know when the show's going to air. Just like
Oh,
send
so
us."
you couldn't release something that had already been out, right? You couldn't
Exactly.
submit like, oh, okay, I'm gonna put out whatever song that you had already written.
Exactly. So I had to like go through my catalog and be like, what is a song that I'm not planning on putting out, but I could, like, I wouldn't be mad at putting out. And so I landed on I Don't Take Pictures Anymore, which was a great like final conclusion to that EP I was making at the time, which was all about like my family and growing and coming of age kind of music. Um, and so it ended up working out perfectly. But yeah, I feel like that was one of multiple things that were happening for me around that time that were helping to grow my fan base and my presence online with TikTok. I was one of the first people to hop on TikTok in Nashville, I would say, in 2019. I
Wow.
was at the time working as a video editor at a record label, and they had a meeting for everyone and was like, get all of our artists on TikTok. It is the next big thing, blah, blah, blah. And I went home immediately that night and I turned to my friends who are all artists and I was like, we're getting on TikTok. We're not missing the boat. I missed the boat with YouTube. I'm not missing the boat again. We're getting on TikTok immediately. And some listened to me, some didn't. And the ones that listened are having success on TikTok now. And the other ones are still trying to find their way. I think it's hard to make things happen on TikTok now. It's kind of like,
So oversaturated at this
yes. And so TikTok growing was a big, huge push for me. That show was a big, huge push for me. My song All My Ex's Moms came out the following year, and that was another
Oh,
wave
that's
for me.
massive. Yeah, that's a massive.
Yeah. So that's my biggest song that I've ever released, and that had multiple viral waves on social media, which I'm so grateful for. And yeah, just things are continuing to grow, which is really, really fun for me.
Great. With TikTok, did you have your TikTok and were you kind of building that before the show started?
Yes, and I would
Oh.
say I almost feel like I was able to get more exposure for myself and for the song via my own TikTok content that I was posting while being on the show, using the show as a catalyst for the content. But like I had multiple posts go viral while I was on that show because it was like an intriguing thing that I was on the show.
Mhm.
Um,
I'm
and
not
so,
surprised, to be honest. I mean, you look at like we just I hadn't watched American Idol in like 15 years, and then we just started watching it the last season and this season, and like you go to the person that won and you go on their Spotify and it's like they have like 100,000 like monthly listeners, and you're like,
right.
that's interesting. You would think like this. I feel like with television nowadays and in general, it's like it's more of a like smoke and mirrors. Like there's millions of people are watching it, but like in reality, your video on TikTok, it sees and multiple millions more people see it than ever on
Well,
television.
I think it's just interesting because I think years ago, it was like if you got on a TV show like like American Idol, you were set. That was
Right.
all the exposure you needed. But now you kind of have to take an opportunity like that and double or triple it with
Hmm.
how it's like how do you cover that and show it to the world in a way that it continues to push your narrative? Oh, nice.
That's so
um
crazy. It does that. I saw another one and a heart came up on another
yeah,
interview. I was
I
like,
think
what
if
the
you go
hell?
like this and you hold it long enough.
That's
Yeah,
rad.
I recently figured that out with friends. That's so funny.
That's so funny.
But yeah, so it's just because everything is so oversaturated now, you
Mhm.
can't rely on just one exposure to get your name out there. You have to like double down on it, triple down on it.
Right. I mean, with being on the show and then also like really utilizing that piece as well as kind of marrying the two with your TikTok and kind of just building it that way. Um, it sounds like you utilize that contest or that show then in a way to promote and boost your TikTok or your social media numbers. Do you feel like was it a word? I guess you weren't really in a song contest because you're putting out original music. I was wondering because like you'll hear of people that kind of get labeled like, oh, that's blah 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 from American Idol, or that's blah 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 from X Factor.
Yeah.
Uh, did
I think
you worry about that at all, or was it just not so much a big deal because you were actually doing original content?
yeah, that's a great question and definitely something we considered before doing it. But because it was the first time the show was airing, it felt like it was a safe bet also because it was original music. So yeah, it wasn't like the show already had a reputation or anything like that. It was kind of a
Mhm,
brand new thing that I was going to be a part of and test the waters on. I also feel like anyone who is first on a show usually is the most successful. Like, for
mhm.
example, Kelly
Kelly
Clarkson on
Clarkson,
American
yeah.
Idol, like the people who pioneer it are usually the most well known at the end of the day. So that was kind of our thinking going into it, is that like I could be that for that show.
Right, no, 100%, and you've obviously done that, like, I mean, you said your next song was All My Ex's Moms? Was that the first, or was that a little bit I mean,
That
it
I
came out after, obviously, the show, but was that, like, the next introduction to what you were doing as far as your music went?
Yes, yes. And so I remember thinking like, what's the next direction? What am I gonna do to broaden my audience? And I remember people telling me you need to write broader concepts. Your concepts are too specific. You're writing about your mom and your sisters and blah, 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 and no one's relating, blah, blah. And I was just like, I don't think so. And so I was like,
I love that you just didn't listen to them, that's so good.
I guess I just felt in my heart that anything broader was boring to me, maybe. And so when I wrote All My Ex's Moms, I think that's a pretty specific concept.
Yeah,
And
yeah, for sure.
yeah, and it just it worked and it was a really cool experience. I wrote that actually in an all Asian American songwriting camp. So everyone who wrote that with me is of Asian descent.
Really? That's
Yeah.
so rad.
Yeah, it was during AAPI month in May of maybe
Wow.
like 2021 or something like that.
Okay.
Um, and it was with all new people I'd never met. I just walked in, all boys, writing about my moms
Your
with me.
ex's moms.
Yeah, and it turned out great. And I had a feeling it was a special song. And I showed it to my roommate, recorded her reaction, and she freaked out. Has never had that kind of reaction to one of my songs before. And that's the video that went viral on TikTok the first time I shared it. So yeah.
Wow.
And
That's
then
so
it's a little
cool.
life of its own for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting that you were told kind of to be more broad and you're like, I don't think so. Because like you were saying earlier, yeah, it's the more specific songs that you think might only be, your personal experience may only be for you, but those are the ones that people gravitate towards more so. I feel
Yeah.
like
Because
I
people are
had
like, whoa, I didn't know someone else felt this way
exact
too.
same way, right? As I am, but they could put it in words that I couldn't. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, yeah. Like I had Dean Lewis on and he was talking about that song, How Do I Say Goodbye? The one he wrote about his dad when he
Mm,
thought his dad was dying.
mm.
And he's like, I didn't even want to release the song. Like I was just afraid. I didn't think it was relevant to anyone. And then it was like huge viral TikTok thing, and it just now it's a huge hit for him. But it's like one of those things where you think that you're going to, almost not isolate your, like you're going to cut a lot of people out because it's not this broad topic, but
Totally.
more people are, you know, invested in it, probably even more so because, oh my gosh, I relate to this so much. So now they're telling everybody else instead of like a huge net of people, but maybe only a small amount or a few people will like in the beginning, and then it won't be around forever in a way.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened with I'm Sorry Tokyo. I literally was on the phone with my management, like, I don't know if I should put this out. This is like so specific and like heartfelt, and how many half Asian people are there in the world? And that's the song that goes consistently kind of viral on socials, and people always mention when they come up to me after my shows. Um,
That's awesome.
so yeah, it's really cool.
With like the success of those songs and TikTok and everything else, was that opening doors as far as like, were you getting more shows? Like, were you playing live at that point, or were you still really, focusing on just building your online fan base and just getting people like kind of familiar with your music?
Yeah, I mean, the next step was definitely building up my touring history. And so I did my first tour opening for Lost Boy Crow last year. And we did 21 cities in
Man,
28 days. It was very hard and fast, but an amazing experience. I was so blessed to be with those boys who just like taught me so much and helped me and guided me. Um, and so I'm actually going back out on tour in June with a band called Arrows in Action, and we're doing 13 shows with them. So I'm super stoked for that.
rad.
Um,
I've had those guys on. They're
oh yeah,
great dudes. Yeah, Arrows in Action.
yeah,
They have
I'm
kind of
so
like that pop punk sound ish. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. I actually haven't met them yet in person. But they seem really nice, and everyone I speak to loves them. So
They're such a great band. Like, I had never heard of them, and I was listening to their music. I was like, damn, okay, these guys are gonna be big. Like, I had
hell
them
yeah,
on a couple years ago or something, or a year. I don't remember, but yeah,
yeah,
I
that's
definitely know
awesome.
those guys. That
Yeah,
they
we're
might be
doing
in Nashville too. I think.
yeah, they are in
Yeah,
Nashville,
yeah,
and
yeah,
we're
yeah.
actually doing a Nashville show on July 14th. You should come.
Where at? I will come.
Yeah, it's gonna be at Cannery Hall. Just after this, we can offline about it.
Awesome. I love that. That's amazing. Cool.
Yeah,
Well, let's talk about your new songs.
yeah,
I mean, I always just go based off of uh album art on Spotify. So I'm imagining like, you have this chunk of songs and all the graphics are similar with the shot of your mouth.
yeah,
Um uh,
yep.
like Hot Like You is the newest one. I want to hear about that song, and I'm wondering if it's going to be part of like another EP or album or
Very astute of you. Yes, Hot Like You just came out, and I'm super stoked on it. And we are building to a larger project, which I'm super excited about. And
Well,
yeah,
can you tell me about the song?
yeah. So Hot Like You, I wrote that originally. The concept was about my sisters, how they are hotter than me. Um, and I feel like for girls, that's like a super relatable idea is like, oh, my sisters are like get more attention from boys or whatever than me
Mhm.
or um and it ended up becoming more of just like a female empowerment anthem, kind of like hot can be replaced with any great quality in a woman. Like, I want to be
Mhm.
smart like you. I want to be nice like you. I want to be driven like you. And when you listen to it through that lens, I think it takes on a whole new meaning, which is really special.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, and it is rooted, the melodies and production are rooted in that like pop punk 2000s,
Yeah,
90s.
the guitar intro in the beginning, like it definitely has that like pop punk
Yeah.
sound to it.
Yeah, and we did a music video for it too, which I love so much. There's a fight scene between me and my friend Arden, who does Krav Maga. And
Oh wow.
yeah,
So
it's
he's a
really
real
fun.
fighter.
Yeah, yeah. So we're both in dresses and heels, and I think it also just hammers home that female empowerment thing that, women can do it all. So it was a great experience, and you can check that out on YouTube.
Yeah, I've watched the video. I love it. And I was reading a quote from you talking about kind of like you almost related it to working a job and then going out at night, right, to perform your songs or to do
Yeah, yeah.
music stuff, right?
Yes.
So
So I did have a day job for 6 years, working as a video editor at a record label. And, I could do music only after work at night and on the weekends. And so this music video is pretty much a metaphor for that lifestyle I was living. And, when I become a spy at night, that's like me writing songs and making music.
right. I love that. At what point do you remember, or you sounds like you don't work there anymore. Was
Mhm.
there a moment, or like, do you remember having the opportunity? I mean, that doesn't sound like a bad gig. Like, I've talked to other people that are like, yeah, I was working construction and then I got a
Yeah.
chance to, or I was working at the shoe store, and like going in and quitting that job was like the greatest day of my life. Like, do you remember like having the opportunity to be like, you know what, I can fund my lifestyle solely on what I want to do?
Yeah, it was so special to me. I was so supported at the at the workplace I was at. My boss would like come to my shows and like
Rad.
support my music and stuff like that. So they knew that that was my ultimate dream. And it got to a head where, I was getting so many opportunities I didn't want to turn down. I was running out of PTO. And
Hmm.
I had to sit down with my boss and have that talk with him. And he was the one who encouraged me. He was like, I think it's time for you to quit and pursue this. Like, we are gonna like wholeheartedly support you, but like it's becoming too much. I think you need to do this. And like that was kind of what I needed, because I've always been a person that really strives for stability.
Yeah.
And I was so nervous to take that leap of faith and become full-time freelance. But I'm so glad he pushed me to do that, because now this past year has been like the greatest year of progression in my music career. And things are continuing to build, and I'm able to do focus on music fully now and create this project that I'm working on. So yeah, it's been so great.
Love that. I wonder if, because you worked at a label and then having the person that was, you were in the industry in a way, right? I mean, having somebody from the industry say, you should keep, it's almost like you're getting validated from a thing that people are striving to get anyway, right? Like getting a record deal. Like that's the, I want to, at least when I was growing up, it was like, if you got a record deal, it's like, that was it. But nowadays it's more so like you could do it all independently. Anyway, that
Yeah.
being said, like, was that a factor too? Like, wow, somebody at a record label is co-signing the fact that I should continue just doing music instead of being like, you know what, you should probably give that up and yeah, just focus on this job because you really have no chance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that for sure helped, definitely. But yeah, I mean, I think just all signs were pointing to that, this was how it was going and where it was going, and I just needed him to say it to me point blank.
Love it. So back to your new music, like, were these, I mean, Girlfriend, Seriously, Moved to all those, I love your song Moved to LA, I Don't Want to. Like, that's so good.
Thank
Just
you.
coming from San Diego and Southern California. But
That's such a thing here in Nashville. Everybody feels like they have to move to LA in order to make things happen, but
I get
I'm
the
trying to put my stake in the ground and be like, no,
yeah,
you do.
I always get the, and what was wild when I moved here is, you run into people at the Kroger or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, I just moved here. Where'd you move from?" I moved from California, and this is like 2020, 21, beginning of 21, and they're like, "Oh, you and 10 bazillion other people." I'm like, "Really? Like what?" And then
Yeah,
obviously that is happening. Like, um, you probably felt that. I don't know how long you've been in Nashville, but I'm sure you've kind of seen everyone from the
ebb and
West
flow.
Coast move over, and you're like, you're creating more traffic, like you're bringing this vibe that's different than what we're used to.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because there's people who are moving to LA and there's people moving here from LA. Just it
Mhm.
just depends on what, the next phase of their life is and what they're going for. But
Sure.
yeah, it is super interesting, the balance and the ebb and flow of that.
Yeah. Are all these songs, were they all kind of written within the same time period? Like, do you have like a block of, like, with all these new songs, Caught Like You and Girl, the ones I just you mentioned, kind of, are those all done like, okay, or were they written as like a single? and then like, okay, I love this song, let's just put it out. And then eventually you kind of saw a catalog building and kind of like a through line between the music to be like, oh, this could be a project, or was it
Yeah.
written
Definitely
kind of in
more like
chunks?
the second one that you said. Up until kind of now, I've always written singles as I go, and then at the end, I'm like, all right, it's an EP, tie it together. But
Okay.
for this project of
Thing.
music, I was actually I feel like I've gotten to a point in my career and my skill set where I was writing songs consistently that I really liked and thought had value, um, and were worth releasing. And so I kind of had them all together and was like, all right, this is something already. Like
Mm.
usually I'm stressed, like, okay, I need to write the next song. I don't have the next song, but I had a bunch of songs at once and that like never happens. And so I was like, okay, I think this is something special here.
Okay. And do you feel like a lot of that had to do with maybe that you only had to focus on that? It wasn't like, oh man, I gotta try to get PTO again and like,
You know what?
convince my boss that I need to spend a day writing music, or, just kind of leaving that stress
Uh,
behind.
that's super interesting you bring that up. I haven't thought of that before, but that's 100% a factor. That's definitely what the difference is if you like think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to wake up like worried. I mean, when I was doing this podcast and being on the radio at the same time, I remember waking up like so stressed out. Like, is my boss gonna rip me because I was on the air like about doing this because I'm, like, oh, are you trying to just I don't know. It's like one of those things where you're almost like kind of in two places where you're like, I don't want to piss these people off, but I
Yeah.
also want to pursue this thing that I love. And at that point, you were kind of given the you need to do this, and now that weight is probably in a way like you almost subconsciously like, okay, I don't have to think about going to
Yeah. What
work
was it
anymore.
like for you when you switched over to doing the podcast full time?
It was It was terrifying in the beginning. I mean, I had to let everything go. Stability, which was big for me, insurance and all these things that I had. And you're just like, all right, well, I had to talk to my wife and we're like, let's do this. But I kind of landed in a time when radio in 2020, when the pandemic happened, like all the local companies, I mean, the Chevy dealer down the street wasn't putting money into the advertising anymore because they're not selling cars. So it was
Mhm.
like, everything started to plummet. And I don't even, I loved radio and I loved it as a kid, and being able to do it was the greatest thing ever. But like, I just don't see it coming back up now. It's just like, and like you look at like iHeart stock is like 50 cents. So it's like, yeah, I'm glad I got out when I did. And
Mhm.
but it was terrifying as hell for sure. It was like, is this the smartest thing? Like, am I going to lose everything? Am I going to even be able to do this? Am I
Yeah.
giving up the whole industry that I was dedicated so much of my life to, and working overnights and on the fly, just going in and, leaving my family to be like, I have to do this shift that they're offering me in the afternoon right now. Sorry. You
Right.
give up so much to try to do this thing. And then it was like, do I really want to leave all that? And I had to, and it was the best decision I ever made. But it
That's
sounds like, you leaving there, you're like, well, now I got all these songs and I have a project and I have all this,
Yeah, I think
stuff.
yeah, and we're so young. Like there is so much time to
You are
do.
so young.
No, but we are like
I so am not.
I don't know how old you are, but you look young. That's all that
Oh,
matters.
I appreciate that. That makes me feel good. Okay, then I'll go with that. I'm young.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it just you don't realize how much time there is to just change careers and try something completely new um
Yeah,
and build a whole new career. So,
I love it. I love it. Well, you said you're doing this tour coming up, and
yeah.
Nashville's a date, and I want to ask you about that after this. But um, how like you just came out, so obviously that's the main focus. The video is great, and it sounds like you have more songs coming in the
Yeah,
near
thanks.
future.
Yeah, I'm gonna start pushing the next song soon, like probably in next week. So
Amazing.
stuff is
So
coming. Get ready.
I love it. Do you tease it like on your TikTok first? Do you kind of like, is that like a way, do you kind of utilize that as, should I put this as the next single, or is that you already kind of know what you want to do?
Yeah, there are people that do it that way, but I'm kind of like, I already made the decision. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I believe in this song, so let me figure out ways to promote it. And it's like a safer way for me because sometimes I feel like I've seen people promote a song and it's not ready. It's like a demo. And then people are like, we need this song out. And then they're freaking out trying to get it done. For me, I'm just like, I'm not even going to show you guys any songs unless they're done. And so if you
Oh,
can
smart.
vote over it, I can put it out tomorrow if I need to, you know?
That's smart.
Um,
I've had a handful of people on that have had that same thing happen where it's like they
yeah.
just put up like a chorus that they liked or they wrote, and then it's all right. Well, now when's the song coming out? When the song? Oh man, I got to go home and write the verse. I got to go home
Yeah.
and do that, and then try to record it the next day to catch this wave that's happening right now. But to have it already in the bag, that's
Yeah. And I
obviously
feel like I'm very type A and like everything to be structured. And if a random song that I wasn't planning on putting out blew up and then I had to put it out, I'd be like, ugh, this doesn't fit the vibe of the other songs I was going to put out. What am I going to
yeah,
do now? You know what I mean?
right.
I feel like the project was like all messed up. So
Yeah, everything got screwed up on your list of how everything was supposed to go in a way.
yeah, yeah. So I'd rather just be in control and I'm like, here's the next song. Hope you love it like I do.
I love
Um,
that.
Yeah, but generally at this point, I'm using like 3 weeks to 4 weeks to promote the song before it comes out, and just like hoping to build up the pre-saves. And
Mhm.
because even if a song doesn't blow up fully, um, you can grow the pre-saves slowly over time. You
Yeah,
know,
100%. I mean,
but if it does
people
blow
have
up,
songs that will blow up, months, even years later after it comes out. So it doesn't
absolutely,
really matter if you catch it
yeah,
right away. But
absolutely.
um, thank you again so much, Brooke, for doing this. I really appreciate your time. This has been so fun.
Yeah, this was so fun. Thanks so much for chatting with me.
Of course. I do have one more question before I let you go. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Something that I always say that, or I heard a while back and now I always say it is, know you are great, but not greater than anybody else. So go into things confidently, knowing that you have the tool set to make it awesome and you are great. Um, and walk into a room feeling that way, but also lift up everyone around you. Make sure everyone else feels heard and feels like they are good as well.
Bringing it backwards.